Have you ever felt a strange presence you can't explain? Have you noticed your pet staring into the darkness at something you can't see?
Welcome to Spirit Hounds, the podcast that combines our two passions, the paranormal and all things canine.
I'm Nicky, Gardiner, an author with a keen interest in the paranormal.
I'm Davina, a professional dog trainer and instructor.
And we are joined by our curious miniature dachshund, Rosie.
Join us as we explore the fascinating world of ghostly encounters, spooky legends from around the globe, as well as real-life dog training tips and techniques.
Hello and welcome to episode 5 of Spirit Hounds. On this episode we will discuss stone tape theory, and I will share about a couple of UK haunted hotels.
I'll be discussing Dybbuk Boxes. We've also got a listener submission. Someone sent in a question about dog training. And in other dog training areas, we will be discussing marker training, such as using the clicker or the yes sound when you're teaching a dog a new command. Okay, yes. So in episode 1, about 25 minutes in, Nicky mentioned a story about a man who witnessed a Roman army march through a basement he was in, but they were only visible from the knees up. So I had a quick look through and we did some research on this, and we found out that the gentleman in question, his name was Harry Martindale. In the 1950s, he was an apprentice plumber working in the basement of the Treasurer's house near York Minster. He heard and then saw a Roman soldier with a horse, followed by a further 15 soldiers on foot, appear from the wall at one end of the cellar and then march across and disappear through the other wall. But, as Nicky mentioned before, the strangest thing, well, more of a strange thing, was that they're only visible from the knees up. Now, Harry Martindale didn't mention anything for over 20 years for fear that people would think he was mad, but then he read an article in a newspaper that 2 other people had experienced the same thing in the same place, so he came forward. It also transpired a bit later that archaeologists carried out some excavation work, and they did indeed find an old Roman road approximately 18 inches below the modern floor level, which is, what would you say, Nicky, about the length of a foot to a knee, possibly?
Yeah, I reckon so.
This type of experience is usually known as a residual haunt, as the soldiers and the horses are not interacting with any witnesses. They're seemingly replaying an event, much like a video recording being triggered to play over and over again. So a theory about this phenomena is called stone tape theory, and it was brought up just recently on TV, wasn't it? On BBC's Uncanny. I think it was episode 2 of the 2nd series just a few weeks ago. And the idea is, and it is just a theory, but it is believed that certain materials like stone are able to store recordings of traumatic historical events and then play them back on a loop if certain conditions are met that triggers this recording to go again. The name stone tape theory got its name from a BBC TV play from the 1970s, which was actually called The Stone Tape Theory. The play showed hauntings that were being played from literal tape recorders hidden within large stones, but that's where the name of the theory came from. And it doesn't seem to be that dissimilar to the idea of psychometry, where people leave some kind of emotional residue on personal objects. I mean, some of the objects that we've discussed before are items like the Roman ring and the bit that attaches to the belt. I can't remember the name of it. Nicky, can you?
Terminal.
Called a terminal, a belt terminal. That's it, yeah. So the idea that some emotional residue is actually attached onto an item or certain materials such as stone. I think even quartz is another one as well that can absorb this energy and then replay it back at certain times. So so just a bit of a throwback really. It came up on a recent episode of Uncanny and we thought we'd do some more research into it because it was mentioned on the first episode.
What do you think of it though? Do you believe in stone tape theory?
Well, I've never witnessed it myself, so it's one of those things where I'd like to believe it.
And equally, if this cellar has this happen, it's happened to several people, wouldn't you set a camera up down there like 24/7?
Yeah, if people are seeing it, surely it would show up on film if it was being recorded, wouldn't
You'd
it?
have every device there, like all the time. If it's happened so many times, I mean, I'd like to see it. I love my Roman stuff anyway. I'd love to see that. So why have they not set up a camera sort of monitoring the area all the time if this is such a frequent thing?
Yeah, there are certain places that you think this would happen, where certain traumatic events have happened, and boom, it's going to happen and replay again.
Equally, if stone tape theory is true, if there was a thing about the stone is recording stuff, wouldn't you have loads of haunted caves? Because people lived in caves. So surely you're surrounded by stone all the time there. Wouldn't we be seeing like cavemen ghosts, like in every cave system that people went in?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
But you
Yeah.
never hear. I mean, I might look into it, but I've never heard of it.
No, that's true. But then if this does happen a lot, I mean, a lot of old buildings were made of stone, like castles and things like that. You have a lot of phenomena that happens there and people's experiences of these things playing out because it's within a stone built.
But we're thinking that
Property.
caves were inhabited so long ago that over time this recording degrades or something. Is it that why we don't see these cavemen ghosts and things?
Maybe. Then maybe in time the Roman ones will subside because that
So, I
was
mean, you think they
2,000
record
years
it while
ago.
they can. If this has happened, was it 3 times that you mentioned?
Yeah, according to my research, Harry Martindale first noticed it. He then read a report that 2 other people had experienced the same thing in the same place. That's at least 3 people. I don't know if any more people have come forward.
Not to mention, if it's a basement or cellar, people ain't down there a lot, I'd imagine.
No.
So it could be happening quite a lot with no one to witness it.
It'd be interesting to see what the trigger could be. I know some people say that some of these experiences are triggered if upheaval is happening, if there's any works being done or refurbishments being done.
I'll volunteer. I'd go down there and do some DIY if I got to see that.
It'd be pretty cool,
worth it,
wouldn't
wouldn't it? Yeah, if you could trigger it, why not?
Yeah, exactly. Just go down there with your drill, put a picture up just to make
Yeah.
it happen again.
The Langham Hotel is a large, imposing luxury hotel, actually being the largest in London when it was opened in 1865. Often referred to as a grand hotel, or more cruelly or aptly, given its paranormal happenings, as a monster hotel by others. Spread over 10 floors, including basements and attics, and overall half again bigger than the Grosvenor Hotel in 1862, it aimed to suit all from princes to the middle classes. The Langham Hotel is known as the most haunted hotel in London, with at least 5 ghosts supposedly being spotted gliding through the walls. Amongst the many sightings, people have reported a German prince who jumped out of a window to his death. One of England's cricketers team, Stuart Broad, stayed in the hotel and said to the Daily Mail, "It was so hot in the room, I just couldn't sleep. All of a sudden the taps in the bathroom came on for no reason. I turned the lights on and the taps turned themselves off. Then when I turned the lights off again, the taps came on. It was very weird." Other ghosts of the hotel are said to be a doctor who murdered his wife, then killed himself while on their honeymoon, manifests as a silver-haired Victorian gentleman with cloak and a cravat, and like all ghosts has blank staring eyes. Spotted in 1973 by BBC announcer James Alexander Gordon while he slumbered in room 333. He only makes appearances in October. A German prince who jumped out of a 4th-floor window, described by BBC announcer the late Ray Moore as beefy with cropped hair, sporting a military-style jacket that buttoned up to the neck, is frequently observed in the early morning hours walking through doors. Rated most active ghost of the Langham, with a particular penchant for room 333. There is also a man with a gaping wound on his face. He tends to stick to the hallways. Emperor Napoleon III, who lived at the Langham during his last days in exile, now prefers apparently the basement. A ghost who has a thing for tipping guests out of bed while they're asleep once shook the bed in room 33 with such enthusiasm that the occupant fled the hotel in the middle of the night. There is also a butler seen wandering the corridors. A footman in pale blue livery and powdered wig, spotted by, you guessed it, BBC staff. Here's the BBC's connection. The Langham is just opposite Broadcasting House, home of the BBC after World War II. Several rooms of the 3rd floor were kept as accommodation for BBC journalists who for whatever reason had to stay overnight. Skeptics have suggested the ghostly encounters were concocted by BBC journalists to get out of deadlines. There are reports that Winston Churchill, Princess Diana and even Mark Twain felt a strange presence and even saw ghostly figures during their stays here. But these are just rumours, there is no proof of these. What's your thoughts on those?
That must be the most haunted hotel.
Or is it BBC biased?
I mean, it's a good story for getting out of a deadline for something, isn't it? I was awake all night, kept awake all night by Napoleon marching around, cricketers jumping out the window. No, so was it a prince, German prince that jumped out the window? And goodness knows what else going on. Blimey. That's more of a story than probably what they're there covering.
I think this is the one I actually looked at and it's quite expensive to stay in.
I bet it is.
Yeah.
I'm surprised there's any room for living people, everything else.
No, I did look at it because I thought, we're not far from London, we could go and stay there, and then I saw the prices and was kind of put off.
Really?
Yeah, it's quite expensive. I did see where one lady had gone to stay in room 333. She was sort of an amateur investigator, really interested in it, and she was expecting something to happen, but really, even the bellhop or whatever you want to call him, the guy who takes the bags up, she asked him, said, does anything happen? And he was like, no, not really. He said he's always on that floor and he's never seen anything.
And sorry, did you say she stayed in room 350?
She chose that room on purpose, yeah.
And nothing happened?
Not for her.
Different one.
It's not always going to happen, I suppose, you could argue.
And what's the name of this hotel again?
This is the Langham Hotel.
I don't remember seeing any shows about this. When the teams of investigators descend on places in England.
Maybe because it's a luxury hotel in London, they don't really need the extra press.
Maybe you think there'd be some kind of documentary about it. Just say, oh, look, we've got this and that. I don't recall hearing that. Maybe because it's just not garnered that much evidence over the years. It's just hearsay.
Well, if it is just the BBC.
You saying the BBC? I might just say something and can't back it up with evidence.
Where I researched it, they're saying, skeptics suggest that it's concocted by BBC journalists, so who knows?
I mean, blimey, that is a heck of a lot of stuff. That would be worthwhile doing a documentary there. If one exists already, I don't know. But if not, that would definitely be worth checking out, doing a proper investigation.
Lumley Castle was originally a manor house built in the 14th century by Ralph Lumley. Upon Ralph's return from the wars in Scotland, the house was converted into a castle. However, after being involved in a plot to overthrow King Henry, Ralph was sentenced to death, ultimately losing his lands to the Earl of Somerset. This magnificent castle has stood proud over the County Durham castle landscape for over 600 years, situated along the River Wear and in the middle of a beautiful parklands. The hotel is a location full of natural beauty. In 1421, the castle was returned to the Lumley family when Sir Ralph's grandson, Thomas, became the owner. Lumley Castle is supposedly haunted by the spirit of a 14th century lady of the manor, Lily Lumley. She was apparently murdered by 2 priests after she refused to follow the Catholic faith. It is believed she was thrown down a well on the castle grounds. She continues to haunt the castle to this day, wandering the corridors and rooms, spooking guests and staff alike. The castle was in the headlines for its hauntings in 2005, when some of the Australian cricket team reported strange activity and refused to sleep on their own. One member of the team was so spooked by something that they fled their room and ran to the reception in just their underwear. Lady Lumley also spooked the West Indian cricket team in 2000, when the then captain of the team, Jimmy Adams, and his team checked out of the hotel early because they were so scared. Lily is not the only ghost at the castle. There is a ghost known as Black Jack, who's a mischievous spirit that likes to play pranks on guests. Such things as sliding glasses off the table, moving belongings, have been reported. There have also been many reports of children being heard talking, screaming and laughing, originating from the top floor. There has also been the sighting of a strange man that has been sitting in the corner of the bar. Orbs are often seen, with some light anomalies also witnessed. I don't know what it is about cricket teams, because the first one had cricketers. This one's got 2 cricket teams fleeing the place, so either cricketers are particularly haunted, or, I don't know. What do you think?
It's pretty weird, isn't it? That is pretty... Okay, so, yeah.
It's worth looking up the castle. It's quite nice. I mean, the dining room bit looks really kind of medieval looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice.
It gives a little bit more credence to something when people flee the place because they're too scared to stay there anymore. I mean, a whole cricket team of, I'd imagine, like burly, manly men go, God, I can't stay here anymore because there's ghosts, and have to leave the place. That kind of adds a little bit more credence to the story. I don't think they're...
The thing as well is, if you're famous and you do something kind of silly that can cause headlines, people are going to know about it. If you're just an average Joe and you flee the place, no one's going to care, really. But when you're famous in any way and you flee somewhere, it's going to make headlines, or it's going to be reported on somewhere.
I mean, you mentioned orbs and things like that. I don't
Yeah,
really hold much sway on that. To me, it's just bits of dust
I don't
flying
mention
across.
orbs, that's what they are called.
But that doesn't really mean much to me. Feelings and orbs and things like that, that's not really evidence, is it? But a whole cricket team having to leave. Again, they do seem to have this energy, don't they, that they take to places.
It just makes you wonder, doesn't it? Why?
Maybe the ghosts are attached to the cricket teams and get moved from place to place.
Doubt it. But it is odd why particularly it's cricketers, but I don't know.
That's strange on that one.
Would you like to stay in a haunted hotel?
Yes.
Oh, you surprised me.
Not on my own, though. And I'd have to have every type of equipment around, filming every possible angle, just to make sure anything that happened is captured. And I wouldn't want to be on my own, because I wouldn't want to be someone who flees the hotel in fear.
You'd stay dressed, wouldn't you, just in case?
Oh, yeah. Dressed, shoes, coat, ready, just in case I needed to get out. But yeah, I would like to stay in a haunted hotel. Would you?
I would. I don't think I'd sleep, though, because I'd be I suppose there's that nerve side of it. I don't sleep in a new bed anyway, somewhere different very easily. But I think I'd want to stay awake just in case I saw something.
Yeah, I think if I fell asleep, I'd probably sleep through anything, everything. Bed would be shaking
Yeah.
about, flying around the room, and I probably wouldn't wake up. So I probably would have to stay awake for the night.
So have you had a look at any local hotels?
Yes, actually, going back or harking back to the previous episode, episode 4, where we're talking about haunted Colchester and Colchester Castle, there's quite a lot of so-called haunted hotels in Colchester. One in particular called the Rose and Crown Hotel, and they've got a whole page of ghost stories, things that have been witnessed and experienced within their walls of their hotel. So it's the Rose and Crown Hotel, dates back over 700 years, and it is the oldest hotel in Colchester. Colchester is the oldest city in Britain, and as we discussed last episode, it is well known for hauntings within the castle, and apparently a lot of stuff happens within the hotel too.
Any Roman ghosts?
Let's have a look. There's a story about Lady in Black. Someone else said they stayed in room 201 and there were creaking noises, lots of noises going on that woke them up, but they couldn't see anything. TVs turning on and off. A woman in a white wedding dress seen in one of the rooms as well. Apparently some happenings going on during the COVID-19 lockdown.
Really? I have questions about that. So that's just the staff witnessing that, is it?
Yes, according to their page, during the COVID-19 lockdown, a member of staff called Steve was sleeping in the empty hotel and couldn't explain the spooky goings on. I was relaxing in my room, and out of the corner of my eye, I kept noticing movement. There was no one else there, and at first I thought I was imagining it. Steve focused on watching TV, but out of nowhere the TV kept flickering. I was unnerved and definitely felt I wasn't alone in that room.
Thing is, a hotel that's empty is going to feel odd. I mean, he's used to it being bustling with people, I'd imagine.
Yeah, maybe, and I understand if it's an old building, it's over 700
Exactly.
years.
What's the electrics like and stuff?
Could be a bit
It
dodgy.
sounds big. You said room 200 and something earlier.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how big the hotel is. We'll have to check it out. Apparently it's got an awful lot of goings on there. Okay, so I thought this section we could talk a little bit about Dybbuk boxes. This is something I heard about a few years ago, and it's been quite a fascinating topic. If I read you the story of what happened with this particular Dybbuk box and this man's experiences with it, and then we'll take each section at a time and we can discuss through what you think of each part.
Will you actually tell me more about what it actually is?
Yes, as things go along, things will develop and I'll
Okay,
explain
'cause
to
my
you.
knowledge of this is actually quite limited.
Right, I'll start from the beginning. Here we go. In 2003, Kevin Manus decided to sell a small wine cabinet on eBay. He tentatively wrote out the listing, giving its history and his personal terrifying experiences with it, which read as follows. All of the events that I am about to set forth in this listing are accurate and may be verified by the winning bidder with the copies of hospital records and sworn affidavits that I am including as part of the sale of the cabinet. During September of 2001, I attended an estate sale in Portland, Oregon. The items liquidated at this sale were from the estate of a woman who had passed away at the age of 103. A granddaughter of the woman told me that her grandmother had been born in Poland, where she grew up, married, raised a family, and lived until she was sent to a Nazi concentration camp during World War II. She was the only member of her family who survived the camp. Her parents, brothers, a sister, husband, and 2 sons and a daughter were all killed. She survived the camp by escaping with some other prisoners and somehow making her way to Spain, where she lived until the end of the war. I was told that she acquired the small wine cabinet listed here in Spain, and it was one of only 3 items that she brought with her when she immigrated to the United States. The other 2 items were a steamer trunk and a sewing box. I purchased the wine cabinet along with the sewing box and some other furniture at the estate sale. After the sale, I was approached by the woman's granddaughter, who said, "I see you got the Dybbuk box." She was referring to the wine cabinet. I asked her what a Dybbuk box was, and she told me that when she was growing up, her grandmother always kept the wine cabinet in her sewing room. It was always shut and set in a place that was out of reach. The grandmother always called it the Dybbuk box. When the girl asked her grandmother what was inside, her grandmother spat 3 times through her fingers, said, "A Dybbuk, Pesselim." The grandmother went on to tell the girl that the wine cabinet was never, ever to be opened. The granddaughter told me that her grandmother had asked that the box be buried with her. However, as such a request was contrary to the rules of an Orthodox Jewish burial, the grandmother's request had not been honoured. I asked the granddaughter what a Dybbuk and Kesselim were, but she did not know. I asked if she would like to open it with me. She did not want to open it, as her grandmother had been very emphatic and serious when she instructed her not to do so, and, regardless of the reason, she wanted to honour her grandmother's request. I finally ended up offering to let her keep what seemed to me to be a sentimental keepsake. At that point she was very insistent and said, No, you bought it. I explained I didn't want my money back, and that it would just make me feel better to do what I thought was an act of kindness. She then became upset. Looking back now, the way she became upset was just plain odd. She raised her voice to me and said, You bought it, you made a deal. When I tried to speak, she yelled, We don't want it. She began to cry, asked me to leave, and quickly walked away. I wrote the whole episode off to the stress and grief she must have been experiencing. I took my purchases and politely left. At the time, when I bought the cabinet, I owned a small furniture refinishing business. I took the cabinet to my store and put it in my basement workshop, where I intended to refinish it and give it as a gift to my mother. I didn't think anything more about it. I opened my shop for the day and went to run some errands, leaving the young woman who did sales for me in charge. After about half an hour, I got a phone call on my cell phone. The call was from my salesperson. She was absolutely hysterical and screaming that someone was in my workshop breaking glass and swearing. Furthermore, the intruder had locked the iron security gates and the emergency exit, and she couldn't get out. As I told her to call the police, my cell phone battery went dead. I hit speeds of 100 miles per hour getting back to the shop. When I arrived, I found the gates locked. I went inside and found my employee on the floor in a corner of my office sobbing hysterically. I ran to the basement and went downstairs. At the bottom of the stairs, I was hit by an overpowering, unmistakable odour of cat urine. There had never been any animals kept or found in my shop. The lights also didn't work. As I investigated, I found that the reason the lights didn't work also explained the sounds of glass breaking. All of the light bulbs in the basement were broken. All 9 incandescent bulbs had been broken in their sockets, and 10 4-foot fluorescent tubes were lying shattered on the floor. I did not find an intruder. However, I should also add that there was only one entrance to the basement. It would have been impossible for anyone to leave without meeting me head-on. I went back up to speak with my salesperson, but she had left. She never returned to work after having been with me for 2 years. She refuses to discuss the incident to this day. I never thought of relating the events of that day to having anything to do with the cabinet. Then things got worse. As I already indicated, I had decided to give the cabinet to my mother as a birthday gift. About 2 weeks after I made the purchase, I decided to get started refinishing it. I was surprised to find that the cabinet has a unique little mechanism. When you open one of the drawers, the mechanism causes the opposite door and the little drawer below to open at the same time. It is very well made. Inside the cabinet I found the following items: a 1928 US wheat penny, a 1925 US wheat penny, one small lock of blonde hair bound with string, one small lock of black-brown hair bound with string, one small granite statue engraved and gilded with Hebrew letters. I've been told that the letters spell out the word shalom. One dried rosebud, one golden wine cup, one very strange black cast-iron candlestick holder with octopus legs. I saved all of the items in a box, intending to return them to the estate. The family has refused the items, so they will be included in the sale of this cabinet. After opening the cabinet, I decided not to refinish it. I cleaned it and rubbed in some lemon oil. It was at this time that I noticed that there was an inscription in Hebrew carved into the back of the cabinet. I have no idea what it says or if it is significant. I've included a picture of that inscription below. On my mother's birthday, October 28, 2001, my mother called to tell me that she was going out of town with my sister for 3 days, and we postponed celebrating her birthday together until she returned. On October 31st, 2001, my mother came to my shop. We were going to have lunch together, but before we were going to leave, I gave her the wine cabinet. She seemed to like it. While she examined it, I went to make a phone call. I hadn't been out of sight more than 5 minutes when one of my employees came running into my office saying that something was wrong with my mum. When I went back to see what the matter was, I found my mum sitting in a chair beside the cabinet. Her face had no expression, but tears were streaming down her cheeks. No matter how I tried to get her to respond, she would not. She could not. It turns out my mother had suffered a stroke. She was taken to the hospital by ambulance. She ended up suffering partial paralysis and losing her ability to speak and form words. She has since regained the ability to speak, though. She could understand things being said to her and could respond by pointing to letters of the alphabet to spell out words she wanted to say. When I asked her the following day how she was doing, she teared up and spelled out the words N-O-G-I-F-T, no gift. I assured her that I had given her a gift for her birthday, thinking that she hadn't remembered, but she became even more upset and spelled out the words HATEGIFT, hate gift. I laughed and told her not to worry. I told her I was sorry she didn't like the cabinet and that I would get her anything she wanted if she promised to get well soon. Still, I didn't associate anything that had happened with the cabinet itself or anything paranormal. Frankly, I don't think I ever even used the term paranormal until this last month. I'll try to make this short now. I gave the cabinet to my sister. She kept it for a week, then gave it back. She complained that she couldn't get the doors to stay closed and that they kept coming open. There are no springs in the door mechanism, and I have never found that the doors come open. I gave it to my brother and his wife, who kept it for 3 days and then gave it back. My brother said it smelled like jasmine flowers, while his wife insisted that it put out an odour of cat urine. I gave it to my girlfriend, who asked me to sell it for her after only 2 days. I sold it the same day to a nice middle-aged couple. 3 days later, when I came to open the shop for the day, I found the cabinet sitting at the front doors with a note that read, "This has a bad darkness." I had no idea what that meant. Anyway, I ended up taking it home. Then things got even worse. Since the day I brought it home, I began having a strange recurring nightmare. Every time I have the horrible dream, it goes something like this. I find myself walking with a friend, usually someone I know well and trust. At some point in the dream, I find myself looking into the eyes of the person that I am with. It is then that I realize that there is something different, something evil looking back at me. At that point in my dream, the person I am with changes in what can only be described as the most gruesome, demonic-looking hag that I have ever seen. This hag proceeds then to beat the living tar out of me. I have awakened numerous times to find bruises and marks on myself where I'd been hit by the old woman during the previous night. Still, I never related the nightmares to the cabinet, nor do I think that I ever would have. About a month ago, however, my sister, my brother, and his wife came over to my house and spent the night. The following morning, during breakfast, my sister complained that she had had a terrible nightmare. She said that she recalled having had it a couple of times before, and went on to describe my nightmare exactly to the last detail. My brother and his wife froze as they listened, and then chimed in that they had both had the exact same dreams during the night as well. The hair was standing up on the back of my neck, and still is. As we talked, it became clear that the common denominator was that each of us had had the nightmare during the times that the cabinet was in our respective homes. I called my girlfriend and asked if she could recall having any nightmares recently. She described the same nightmare, same hag, everything. When I asked her if she remembered the date when she had the nightmare, she said she did not. Then I asked if it happened to be the night before she gave me the cabinet back to sell for her. She said, "Yeah, hey, how did you know that?" Now then, since my family discussion, it seems like all hell is breaking loose. For a week afterward, I started seeing what I can only describe as shadow things in my peripheral vision. In fact, numerous visitors to my house have claimed that they have seen these shadow things as well. I put the cabinet in an outside storage unit and was awakened when the smoke alarm in the unit went off in the middle of the night. When I went in to see what was burning, I opened the door and didn't see any smoke. However, I did get hit with the smell of cat urine. When I went back inside, the smell was there in my house. I do not own a cat and never have. I went back outside and grabbed the cabinet. I brought it back inside and tried to research it on the internet. While I was surfing the net, I fell asleep and once again had the same freaking nightmare. I woke up at around 4:30 a.m. when it felt and smelled like someone was breathing on my neck, to find that my house now smelled like jasmine flowers, and just in time to see a huge shadow thing go loping down the hall away from me. I would destroy this thing in a second, except I don't really have any understanding of what I may or may not be dealing with. I am afraid, and I do mean afraid, that if I destroy the cabinet, whatever it is that seems to have come with the cabinet may just stay here with me. I have been told that there are people who shop on eBay that understand these kinds of things and specifically look for these kinds of items. If you are one of these people, please buy this cabinet and do whatever you do with a thing like this. Help me. You can see that I have no reserve price or minimum bid. If I can make things any easier, let me know and I will do everything within my abilities. One more note. On the same day my mum had her stroke, the lease to my store was summarily terminated without cause. The measurements are 12.5 inches by 7.5 inches by 16.25 inches. So that is the entire listing on eBay from Mr. Mannis. What do you think so far?
Did Zach Bagans buy it?
We'll get to that.
Okay. Because it's this kind of deal, isn't it, really? I mean, we're talking about an old lady that smells of cat piss. Is that literally what we're talking about?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Shall I tell you what a Dybbuk is?
I'd imagine demon.
Well, kind of, yeah. So a Dybbuk comes from Jewish mythology, and it is described as a malicious, possessing spirit believed to be the dislocated soul of a dead person. The word comes from the Hebrew verb dabak, which means to adhere to or to cling to. There is a depiction of a Dybbuk, which is going to be showing right now on your TV screen or your device screen if you're watching or listening to this episode on the YouTube version. If not, you can look it up. It is by Ephraim Moshe Lillian, and a link to it will be added into the description box where possible.
So this is meant to be an old woman that's died.
So the theory is,
Like
yes.
a spirit that hasn't passed over, that's angry, or whatever, yeah?
Yeah, the term Dybbuk first appeared apparently in 16th century writings, but it only really became more mainstream in about 1920 after a playwright called S1Ep05 had a play called The Dybbuk, and it had its world premiere in 1920. So a Dybbuk box is thought to be what encases the spirit of a Dybbuk after an exorcism, which might be where the idea of the ghost trap in Ghostbusters comes from.
It's also very much like genies in a lamp. Feels like the same kind of deal, where it's inside something, like a container.
Yeah, exactly. But you'll see from the picture of it, it's described as a wine cabinet with a little doors that open up, and you can keep glasses and spirit bottles in there, and then it's just been closed and sealed.
So originally, the original owner of this box, I take it they fled the Nazis after being in the concentration camps, that family? It's their possession?
Yeah, she fled the concentration camp. She was with some other prisoners. The rest of her family were
She
killed.
wasn't in the concentration camp, or she was?
She was.
Then how did she have her possessions? Because they'd all been took off her.
No, she went to Spain. She
Right.
escaped, got to Spain. And some of the possessions she brought over to America was this Dybbuk box, this wine cabinet, plus a sewing box, I think it said, and a chest.
Did she get these items when she was living in Spain?
Yes.
So these aren't from Poland and the Nazi time.
No.
This is from where she relocated in Spain.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
And then went over to America. And that's a couple of the items she took with her, according to the granddaughter.
It's interesting though, someone who's seen the true horror of mankind like that, with the concentration camps and all that going on, is scared of something supernatural.
She wouldn't open it. Somehow she knew something about it because her granddaughter wanted to see what was in it, and she was like,
And I've got to say, the candlestick holder that's black with tentacles,
octopus legs, yeah, I think, yeah.
it's very Cthulhu. That's what I thought as soon as you said that.
It is, isn't it? So, yeah, so all that happened in 2001. In June 2003, Kevin Mannis, the chap who was listing the item, that whole thing I read out, by the way, that was his eBay listing. That was his listing. So he sold the Dybbuk box to a university student named Losif Nitske, who lived in Missouri in America. However, Nitske, in turn, sold it on eBay again 8 months later, stating that he and his roommates had been suffering from insomnia and illnesses when in the presence of the item.
Can I ask a question? Did he sell it at a profit?
Don't know how much Kevin Mannis sold it to the student for, but Nitske sold it on to the next chap called Jason Haxton for $280. Whether that was a profit or not, I don't know, but it only specifies what Nitske sold it to Jason Haxton for. I don't know how much Kevin Mannis sold it
You'd
for.
think if you really wanted to get rid of it, you'd put it on there for like £1.
Well, yeah, I mean, Kevin Mannis did say in his listing there's no minimum price.
He was desperate to get rid of it, yeah? This other guy's like £200. That's
$280, yeah. So, yeah, Nitske, I apologise if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, Nietzke, Nitske, sold it to a gentleman called Jason Haxton for $280 in February 2004. Haxton has also claimed he experienced paranormal activity in the presence of the box, but that it had also had an anti-aging effect on him. He claims he experienced the following: welts and hives when he first had the box, and even experienced coughing up blood and choking. He has said touching it almost puts it into a liquid state, which sounds quite hallucinogenic. And he said that while he had the box, he saw strange lights and shadows. That's some of the weird experiences he had.
I'm confused by that. So you're saying when he touched the box was liquid?
He said touching it almost puts it into a liquid state. Sounds weird, doesn't it?
Yeah.
However, Mr. Haxton, in an attempt to be a bit more scientific about things, he enlisted the help of scientists, paranormalists, Kabbalists, and Wiccans to try and put the box into what he said is of a more manageable state so he could keep it. However, he then ended up putting it into a military-grade shock-proof container and buried it somewhere, as he says, so it couldn't be discovered. So he obviously seemed quite wary of this thing and wanted to hide it somewhere that it couldn't affect anyone else. So it was still in his possession at that time.
You think he'd have studied it?
Well, I can't find any information about what these scientists, paranormalists, Kabbalists, Wiccans found out, but apparently he enlisted their help. Then later in 2004, he launched a website called dybbukbox.com, and apparently it received hundreds of thousands of hits, and this Dybbuk box became something of an internet legend. I have tried looking up dybbukbox.com. It's no longer an active website. The way it was spelt online is DIBBUKBOX.com. Other pronunciations, other spellings of Dybbuk is DYBBUK. But according to my online research, his website was DIBBUKBOX.com, dybbukbox.com. But that's no longer an active website. But it did take on sort of this legendary status, really.
So he started the website for what purpose to then shut it down?
I don't know why he shut it down. It just doesn't exist anymore. Maybe he just doesn't keep it going anymore, or for whatever reason, it's just not running. But it did apparently get hundreds of thousands of hits, and it sort of took on this.
But what was it? Was it just like an information site? Do we know?
Yeah, apparently people were putting comments on there saying that they had had similar experiences, and people really interested in the history of the box, and just all kinds of comments and things put on there about it. He then sold the story rights to a Hollywood production company because of the hype around this box.
Here we go.
Yeah. So sold the story rights to a Hollywood production company, and it was made into a film in 2012 called The Possession, which is a film we've watched. It was produced by Sam Raimi and stars Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Jeffrey Dean Morgan, we know him as Negan from The Walking Dead.
I vaguely remember it, but not enough that it could have made a huge impression.
Later on, Zach Bagans of Ghost Adventures ended up buying the box from Haxton, and it currently lives.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
It currently lives in his haunted museum in Las Vegas. Now, Bagans won't let the public see the box unless they sign a waiver releasing him from any liability if anything happens to that person at that time or shortly afterwards. Then, in June 2018, the rapper Post Malone was with Zach Bagans. I think there was a TV show that was being recorded about his haunted museum, and Bagans decided to open the box and touch the contents inside for this program. Post Malone was apparently touching or holding on to Bagans' shoulder at the time of Bagans touching the contents, and then he had a really bad run of bad luck, which according to his fans was the reason for what happened to him throughout the rest of the year. So in 2018, June 2018 was when it was filmed and this happened. 21st of August that same year, a plane he was on had all the tyres blow out during takeoff, so had to undertake an emergency landing. 1st of September that year, his former home was targeted and burgled by armed robbers who believed him still to be living there. 8th of September that year, he was involved in a car crash. And then in November, his 3-year-long relationship came to an end. So that's quite the run of bad luck.
You're calling it bad luck. I would say losing all the tyres on your aeroplane and landing successfully and being okay is good luck. I would say having the house you used to live in be burgled after you've moved out, it's quite lucky.
But they targeted it thinking he was still there.
I know, but he wasn't. So you could argue it was good luck.
Okay, yeah.
What happened to Zach Bagans? He was touching the bloody thing.
I don't know if anything actually happened to him. But as we know, he has been taken over multiple times, and hasn't he? All the programs we've seen, he normally gets affected by things. So I would imagine, I haven't seen the episode, but I would imagine it probably affected him too in some way. 8th September, he was involved in a car crash. He survived, but it's still quite bad. And then his relationship ended.
That just is a fact of life. That happens.
Okay. But his fans attribute all this to the fact that these things happened in quick succession after him touching someone who was touching the contents of the box. So what do you think so far then about this Dybbuk box?
I'm sceptical. Purely, I mean, the first guy, fair enough, he sold it, he wanted rid of it, yeah. But all the others have made a profit out of it, like a big profit.
Okay.
And I think I always get concerned when that's happening. It's the warning lights go up, and I just think it's monetizing something. And I don't know. I don't believe it.
Don't believe what?
I don't believe the truth of it anymore, because I think they're trying to monetize it. I'd be honest, I don't think Zach Bagans, for example, would ever put himself at risk of anything.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion.
On the 24th of October 2015, Kevin Mannis, the original owner of this Dybbuk box who put it on eBay, apparently wrote a post on the Haunt Me, or Haunt ME, it's got capital M, capital E, but the Haunt Me Facebook page, saying, I am the original creator of the story of the Dybbuk box, which appeared as one of my eBay posts back in 2003. How about this? If you or anyone else can find any reference to a Dybbuk box anywhere in history prior to my eBay post, I'll pay you $100,000 and tattoo your name on my forehead. What do you think now?
I'm not sure what I meant to think about that. Why?
Okay, going on from that. That post was screen grabbed by an investigator called Kenny Biddle and was used as evidence in his column to debunk the story on an online publication called The Skeptical Inquirer. And he stated within his piece, despite what various owners would have us think, the infamous Dybbuk box is not a Jewish wine cabinet from Spain, but instead a minibar from New York. In 2021, Kevin Manus gave an interview to Input magazine, officially stating that the whole Dybbuk box story was fictional. He said, I am a creative writer. The Dybbuk box is a story that I created, and the Dybbuk box has done exactly what I intended it to do when I posted it 20 years ago, which is to become an interactive horror story in real time. But to this day, there are people who continue to push this story as real. There are hundreds of listings on eBay for Dybbuk boxes. I had a look just today. There's still loads and loads of listings on there. They sell for around £60, and they're boxes of different shapes and sizes. Sometimes they're sort of covered in wax, coated all over it, listed with dangerous, do not open. So they sell for about £60 or so. They're in the UK eBay, and you can get them sent from America, or some originate from here.
It sounds very much like the haunted doll phenomenon, where people sell them.
There are also loads of unboxing videos on YouTube. There's tons of them. Watch me unbox my Dybbuk box at 3 a.m. type of things. There's all these things still pushing this as real. So it's kind of taken on a life of its own, that this Dybbuk box is a real life thing. And Zach Bagans continues to promote the item as the most haunted object in the world on his Haunted Museum website. So despite the original owner coming out in an interview and saying, I created this whole thing.
You're telling me that despite evidence to the contrary, Zach Bagans believes it's paranormal? I am shocked.
Are you?
Yes.
I was shocked too. I don't believe he would do something like that.
But then he seems to have filled up from what I watched a documentary about his haunted museum, isn't it? He's got in Vegas. And from what I could understand of the YouTube video I watched, they were basically saying most of his items are just weird items. They're not necessarily haunted anyway, or they're items with links to tragedy, but they're not actually, again, haunted themselves. They're just like something that was owned by someone, or, I don't know, artwork by a murderer or something like that. It's not really supernatural in its nature.
Yeah, he's got, I think it's the chassis or some part of the car that James Dean was driving, and the chair that was in Michael Jackson's room that, I don't know if he died in it or it was next to the bed or something like that from the death scene. Yeah, there are items like that. Yeah, like you said, artwork from, is it Manson? I think that's in his museum as well. So we've got all these various things.
But he's making money out of it, and that's what it comes down to. I mean, he's like super rich.
Even though Kevin Manus created the whole story originally, unexplained things have been reported to have happened to those subsequent owners after Kevin Manus. But is that because they're primed to blame any bad luck on it? Or could it be an egregore, which is an entity that manifests as a result of the collective efforts to conjure or investigate it, which is something we saw on that episode of Kindred Spirits, the zombie boy, where they created a whole backstory, and then this manifested when other people investigated. I think even Chip Coffey picked up on this whole backstory without them telling him, but they had created this whole backstory, and he was picking up on this story about the Civil War and all his family dying and things like that. And that's known as an egregore.
It is the power of suggestion, isn't it, really?
I mean, I haven't watched all these videos on YouTube to see if anything happens when they unbox.
Yeah, but then how would you believe it? You're not believing in the actual thing you've just discussed, and then you've got a load of other people who are kind of copying it, doing a copycat of this prank, basically.
But if they do believe it, because they've not done research to find out that it was all just basically an internet legend or an urban legend, whatever you want to call it, and they do believe it, and then they capture something happening while they're opening it, is it because they've manifested it themselves? Which in itself is a really interesting phenomena, which I think is something we should maybe look into as a deep dive on a future episode.
You have to rig something up inside it, like a jack-in-the-box to go off, scare them.
That'd be brilliant.
Yeah, I have seen all these videos. I have seen the haunted doll ones. While we're on the topic of Zach Bagans, I do seem to remember an episode where he had the Annabelle doll.
Yeah.
And he broke all the rules because the one thing they said to him, don't touch it. We don't want anyone touching it. So he disrespected their wishes straight away and touched it, basically. So that tells me all I need to know about Zach Bagans.
Yeah, I just thought it was a really interesting topic.
It's an interesting phenomenon. But I always get concerned about this sort of thing because, like, another story that I would like to potentially cover in the future is Dear David, which was this haunting that this guy shared on social media. I think it lasted about a year. And it was about this boy ghost that was haunting him. And you kind of think, okay, could be legit. And then, again, he sold it as a movie and made money out of it. And I think he was like some creative job that he did. And you kind of think, yeah, you already had the ability to make this up. And it does feel false at that point. When you find out that they've got a vested interest and they make money from it, it's hard to believe.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? Because you start looking into this thing that's really interesting. And then you think, oh, okay, it was a hoax from the beginning. And I suppose when you really think about it, why would someone use a wine cabinet to house a ghost? And how would you get the thing to go into the cabinet and then just shut a door?
Well, I
and it's
thought it was
stuck in
going to be attached to the items that were found in it when you was talking about it originally.
like we said before about the stone tape theory and the idea of psychometry, where there are these emotional residues left on personal objects. But these Dybbuks themselves, I mean, Dybbuks are in mythology. They've not been proven as a hoax. It's just a Dybbuk box that doesn't really exist. There's nothing prior to this listing in 2001 of Dybbuk boxes being anywhere at all. That's why Kevin Manners did say, if anyone can find it, there's this massive amount of money I'm willing to pay them and I'll tattoo your name on my forehead. Since then, of course, everyone else has jumped on the bandwagon and created their own. But how would you get a demon out of someone, exorcising them, and get it into a box? Unless you are one of the Ghostbusters and you've got a proton pack.
Even when you have these supposed cleansings of houses and things people do, various faiths have their own version. It seems that they're just kind of making the entity either leave the property or pass on to somewhere else. It's not like they actually, like you say, put it in a container.
No.
Kind of like genies, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think they granted many wishes, though.
No, but it is kind of that same thing, isn't it? It did also make me think of the cabinet that we had with the doors opening.
You think we had a Dybbuk box
No,
in
I'm
the
not saying we
cupboard?
did, but we did have the cupboard with the really stiff doors that you really had to yank on to open, and we'd come down every night and those doors would be open nearly.
That's
We
true.
had it, and we sold that, didn't we?
Not to Zach Bagans.
No. If we'd have known about that,
Yeah.
we should have marketed it completely different.
Yep.
We could have made a full check.
Could have been in the Haunted Museum in Las Vegas now.
Yeah.
Damn.
Missed your opportunity. But the power of belief is amazing what it can cause, because one of the stories I didn't read out, that I was going to read out to do with hotels, was about the Adelphi Hotel. And in there they were saying that one of the rooms was an exact replica of it on Titanic, and people were supposedly seeing these sailor ghosts and Victorian ghosts and all these things that feed into it. And then they later proved it is nothing like it. It's not a replica of the room. So the power of believing something seems to manipulate people into thinking of it or conjuring it.
And it becomes so ingrained in people's consciousness that even when various sources are saying it's not real, it's a hoax, it doesn't exist, people still have that in their mind. Nope, this is real, and buy into it still.
Like an echo chamber. People kind of get in the echo chamber of just listening to sources that back up their belief and not any that kind of vie for it or tell them it's wrong. Okay, now we're on to our doggy part of the show, and we have a question. That noise you just heard, that flappy noise that hopefully the mic's picked up, that was Rosie, our little dachshund, shaking her head. She's just woken up from a lovely little nap, just to take part in the doggy bit.
Just in time.
Yeah. Right, so we have a question regarding training from one of our listeners. Here we go. My 5-month-old puppy is constantly chewing on furniture, cushions, shoes, anything he can get hold of. If I try to take them away, he grabs onto my arms and legs and starts biting and chewing them too.
Right, 5-month-old puppy.
Doesn't say what breed.
Okay.
If anyone else does write in though, let us know the breed as well.
Does it say who it's from?
It is from Alice.
Okay, hello Alice, thank you for contacting us. So, 5 months old. First of all, I'm thinking teething, probably. Teething probably end 6 or 8 month age, really, so not too much longer to go. That's probably the number one reason that the dog's chewing on things, but it's best to nip it in the bud.
I was going to say you don't want it to become a habit.
No, when those big teeth come through, it's painful enough when they're little needles, but when the big teeth come through, that's going to be really painful. If the dog is teething, I would say a frozen carrot is going to be really helpful to stop that.
As long as you haven't got a white carpet.
Yeah, I think we'll go a little bit orange, I must say, yeah. Or if the dog's white, the dog will then turn orange. Or you can fill up and freeze a Kong, one of those rubber Kongs you can get. Fill it up with some peanut butter, mashed banana, Greek yogurt, things like that. Freeze it, give it to the dog. So the coldness will help soothe the dog's gums and take him a little while to work on as well and take his attention away from your furniture, soft furnishings, shoes, your limbs. You can get anti-chew sprays and spray it on items that the dog is chewing on. There's some really good ones on the market, some really bitter ones. One that we use, I'll put a link in the description box. It's called Tropiclean Stay Away, and it's the bitterest of bitter. I tried some myself.
I sprayed it on somewhere, and just by breathing in near it when I sprayed it, I felt it go onto my tongue, and it was foul.
Tastes like if you emptied a can of hairspray into your mouth, and that taste doesn't really go away for ages, ages and ages. It's really horrible. Another thing you can do, puppies from really, really early age can start learning command words. And so some of the command words it's best to teach are the impulse control ones, such as drop it and leave it. That's going to be a really good one, important one to learn now.
Have we covered that on an episode yet?
We did start working on impulse control techniques previously, one of the previous episodes, and we put in about the flirt pole.
Might be worth doing a drop it, leave it one for people.
Yeah, we could maybe cover that in more detail. So, yeah, drop it, leave it, and then when the dog does drop and leave the item that he shouldn't have, swap it out for an appropriate toy or a treat, something of equal or higher value. So you're taking away that resource that the dog wanted in the first place and swapping it out for something else, but do it calmly. Don't turn it into an exciting game.
Try not to let them chain the activity.
So yeah, you don't want to start thinking, if I grab this inappropriate item, I then get a high value treat for dropping it. So I'll take the inappropriate item again and then I'll drop it to get the high value treat and so on. So we don't want that. If the dog's grabbing onto you, your hands, your legs, don't let your limbs turn into a chew toy for the dog. If the dog then grabs onto your arm, don't try and pull your arm away, wave your arms around, because that's just really exciting to a puppy. Sit or stand really still, and then the dog's going to get very bored and hopefully drop your arm or your leg, and then you can swap out for another toy. If you start pulling and jumping around and going, the dog's going to find that really exciting and he's not going to let go, and it's just going to turn into a game.
You can do a high-pitched squeak or scream of pain, can't you?
Yes, that should teach the puppy to disengage. So a high-pitched squeak, I'll try and make the noise now. The microphone might
Probably
explode,
yeah.
but you want to do something like, and then the dog will hopefully drop your arm or your leg or whatever he's got in his mouth at the time and look quite surprised. Use that moment when he drops your leg to then give him a more appropriate toy or tell him, good, leave it. The dog should disengage because when they are with their litter mates, when they're first born, that's when they start learning boundaries. So when they're biting and nibbling on each other, if another puppy makes that high-pitched noise, they then learn to disengage the bite and start to inhibit the bite. So if you do make that noise, if they're biting and clawing at you, they should let go. Anything else off the top of my head would be puppy teething toys. You can get, as well as the Kongs, you can get other like Nylabone type puppy teething toys, treats that are specifically created to help during this period, if this is what's happening. I would imagine it is.
Could look for some little teeth around, see if there's any in the toilet.
Yeah, not many people find their puppy's teeth because they eat them, things like that. And I don't think many owners go through the dog's toilet afterwards to try and retrieve any. But it'd be quite sweet to keep them as a little keepsake. So
Hopefully one ain't gone through the system though.
Wash it first. Yeah, exactly. I hope that answers some of your question. If you need any further advice or want any help with that, you can contact us through the website, which is www.storepaws.co.uk. There's a link through to the training page. You can either contact us if you're local to us. I don't know, we're in Stanford Le Hope in Essex, or we can arrange online training if that's more convenient for you. But thank you for your question, Alice. And if anyone else has any questions or anything they want to contact us about, you can email us at spirithounds@yahoo.com. Well, moving on from that, the training section in this episode, the thing I wanted to talk about this episode is marker training. You can use a clicker or voice cue, usually the word yes, to reinforce a requested behaviour. So when we're teaching a new command to a dog, we would either use a clicker, which sounds like this, or say the word yes. So this is called marking a behaviour. It's also known as a bridging stimulus. So saying yes or clicking at the point of a dog executing the command we've given them tells them basically they've done a good job and a reward of some kind is coming. So the idea is you are telling a dog to sit, for example. You say sit. As soon as the dog's butt hits the floor, you would say yes, or you would make that noise, and you would then, after about a second, give them the treat. And then they know once they've heard that noise, because they've been primed, once they hear that noise, they're going to get a reward of some kind because they've successfully carried out the command that you've asked them to do. So using a clicker or the yes method are both positive reinforcement techniques. They are widely recognised as the best and fastest way to shape a behaviour in dogs. Now we normally pair whatever sound you use, either the clicker sound or yes, with a high value treat, something like chicken, hot dog sausage, sprats, even a toy if they're not food motivated, as it's more of a motivator for the dog to repeat the desired behaviour on demand. So keep any high value treats for training sessions only. Don't dole out hot dog sausages all the time. Keep them back just for your training sessions. So when you're teaching a command, they are going to learn that command a whole lot quicker if there's something really high value at the end of it. So the idea is that we ask the dog to do something. For example, Rosie, sit. Then as I said before, as soon as their butt hits the floor, you would or say yes. And then a second later, say good sit to reinforce what the label is, the name of the cue or command you've given. Then you give a treat. Now, give the treat 100% of the time at first, and that's known as the rate of reinforcement. So you give a treat every single time, so the dog always gets a reward at the end of it. Then, once the dog has learnt that command and it's 100% reliable, you can then decrease the amounts of treats that they get. So you can decrease the rate of reinforcement. So once they do it, you would then give a treat every third time they've done it right, then maybe every fifth time, then every seventh time, until you phase out the treat altogether. So the sequence would be their name plus the command, for example, Rosie sit. As soon as they've done it, you would say yes, or followed by good sit, then the treat. So the treat's always the end thing at the end of a sequence. Then when you're phasing out the treat, it's not going to affect the rest of the sequence because the treat is the last thing to happen. But you always want to reward them in some way with a good sit and give them the verbal praise. Now, in order for the dog to learn what the clicker or the word means, we have to do what's called loading the clicker or loading the word. And the way that we do that is the following. You would click or say yes, then you give a treat within 1 second of the sound ending. So you would say yes, treat, yes, treat, or treat, treat, straight away like that. Repeat that 10 to 15 times. After you've done that, you would click or say yes and then wait. The dog should turn immediately to look at you, waiting expectantly for a treat. They are now conditioned to the sound of the clicker or the word yes, and they now associate the sound with the expectation of a reward. Once the dog can reliably turn to you every single time you click or say yes, you can start adding in the commands as per the sequence we discussed earlier. You need to load the clicker or load that word first of all so that they know exactly what to expect when they hear it. Now the clicker or the yes method, there are pros and cons on each one. So the pros of using a clicker is it's a unique sound, it's sharp and quick, there's no confusion as to what it means. There's no change in the tone either, so sometimes people say yes, 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 and it has a different tone each time. But with a clicker, it's always the same sound. It's very good for precision or more advanced training as well. The cons or the disadvantages of using a clicker is it's another thing for owners to have to carry around. Ideally, it should be attached to you all the time so you can mark all instances of requested behaviour, and behaviours that are naturally offered. So if you're having trouble getting your dog to sit and they naturally just sit down, you can good sit. It's difficult to get the timing right, though, carrying a clicker around if you also have a lead in your hand, a treat bag, plus the clicker, plus using hand signals, etc. So it can be a little bit complicated. And some dogs might actually be scared of the sound of the clicker. Pros and cons of using the yes word. Pros are it's easier for basic everyday obedience training. You always have your voice to hand as well, unless you've lost your voice, but usually we can just say yes when we see the dog carrying out the behaviour we've asked of them. There's no need for extra equipment. Also, in some competitions, if you have entered your dog into a competition, they don't allow accessories such as clickers, treat bags, etc. into the arena, but you can use your voice, so you can still get around it and use your voice as the marker. The disadvantages of using a verbal marker, as we mentioned before, your voice can change in tone dependent on your energy level, what emotional state you're in, or any other distractions going on. Some dogs may find it hard to distinguish the training yes from a conversational yes. So once you've got your dog used to hearing the word yes, and you're then talking to someone and you use yes within a conversation, your dog's head's going to be twisting back and forth and what, am I going to get something? So it can be a little bit difficult for them at first, but they can get used to it. And it might not work in loud environments. So if there's a lot going on and your dog's not hearing you say yes, using a clicker should cut through all of that and your dog should hear it wherever they are, really. So yeah, we use marker training first of all to help reinforce the commands, because when we're helping clients teach their dogs either the basics for puppy training or if they've got various other things going on, they do pick up on the command a lot quicker if you mark it so that they know exactly what it is that they've done right, and then they anticipate getting a treat or something. So it is a really, really good, useful thing to do. And it's a positive reinforcement technique, so you're not hurting the dog in any way, you're literally just making a noise or yes, and then giving them a treat to let them know they've done the right thing.
Twice it to say with all these clicks going on, Rosie's right under the table waiting for some kind of reward.
Rosie's currently circling around me like a piranha waiting for something, so I am going to give her a bit of chicken. Rosie, come! Good come! I've just given her a piece of chicken, so she's now happy. She's been bobbing around waiting for something after hearing those noises. Okay, and that's the end of today's episode. Before we finish, I wanted to say that we're going to dedicate today's episode to one of our clients' dogs called Ivy. She's actually booked in for a couple of days' time to be put to sleep because she's had a lot going on. She had a lot of health issues happening, and the vets and the owners have decided that she's been suffering for long enough and she's going to be put to rest at the end of this week. So I wanted to dedicate this episode to Ivy. She is one of our walking clients and we've been walking her now for about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, she only became our client, didn't she? She got out, she escaped the garden.
Yes. And then when we took her home and her owners said we were looking for someone to take her for a walk, that's how we got to know Ivy, and we've been walking her weekly ever since. She's a beautiful girl, lovely staffy, and we're going to miss her. So I just wanted to dedicate this episode to Ivy and put this out in memory of her. So rest in peace, Ivy. We'll miss you. So to finish up, thank you for listening to today's episode. If you want to contact us about anything, if you have any questions or stories, paranormal experiences that you might have had, email us at spirithounds@yahoo.com. You can check out our YouTube channel, which is Spirit Hounds. We have a Facebook page as well called Spirit Hounds Podcast. And if you did want any training at all, either face-to-face or online training, you can go to www.storepaws.co.uk and click through to the link to our training page. And also, don't forget to check out Nicky's book, which is called The Showman in the Shade, available on Amazon.
And please take a moment, if you can, to like us wherever you're listening to us.
Yeah, like, subscribe, contact us, smash that like button on YouTube, as they say. click on subscribe and that bell, which will also notify you when any new episodes come out. So thank you for listening to us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.